Tiger King, Carol Baskin and her missing husband, Don Lewis. It didn't make sense. There's something to this. Joe Exotic reached out to me. I got information that I haven't shared before, but I'd love to share it with you. This is inside info. My group of friends are texting and they keep talking about Tiger King. I got my way to episode 3.
All right.
And episode 3 is where it involved Carol Baskin and her missing husband, Don Lewis.
Let's assume that the viewer hasn't watched it. She was a woman that was advocating to close Joe Exotic's zoo. He had a private zoo that housed big cats.
There was a huge feud that went back and forth because remember, she's wanting to close down his zoo for the same thing she's running. So I watched that episode and it talks about her missing husband. I'm like, well, some of this just doesn't make sense. Like, what the hell happened to him?
Did he take a plane or something? Was he?
Well, that's what was alleged, right? So she alleged that he, got on this plane or went to Costa Rica and, died along the way and no one ever knew anything about it. It didn't make sense. And for me, being a law enforcement guy, like I instantly were like, bullshit. There's something to this, right? And so I decided I literally pulled out the computer, wrote up like a Microsoft Word, like a press release type of thing, just to put it on social media. Because I like everybody else, we're all in the house. Like it's either we're scrolling through phones, watching reels, watching television. And so I put it out that I wanted to know what happened to Carol Baskin's missing husband. So as soon as I put that out and it was COVID, it was a perfect storm. I had a couple 100,000 views on that within like hours. I'm like, holy shit. My inbox, my DMs were just like saturated, right? So I'm going through all of these and I get one and I'm like, this lady was married to somebody that was on the Tiger King show. And she messages me and she's like, listen, I got information that I haven't shared before, but I'd love to share it with you. This is inside info. So I call her and she tells me that she was married to the handyman and that he essentially showed up with all of Don Lewis's firearms in a van because he was given all of those by Carol Baskin. This lady knew that Don was missing 3 days before it ever even aired in the news. Wasn't even reported yet. How did she know? And why is he showing up with all these firearms? So I'm like, okay, either this is complete bullshit or this has to be vetted out. So I'm like, do you mind if I call you again and we start this conversation again, but I'm going to record it so that way I can put it on the podcast, right? And she's like, no, I don't care. So I call her up. We go through the whole story again. And I'm like, but I need proof. Like, how did this actually happen? So at that point, we called Hillsborough County and we're able to find out that, yeah, there was a bunch because she had a domestic violence issue with her ex-husband. I think it was in 2000 or 2001. So Don went missing in 1997. So you're talking 4 years later, right? She says, no, there was a domestic violence dispute. Her ex did something to her physically. I believe he pistol whipped her, but I believe that, okay? And she says, no, there's actual police report. He was arrested for this. So I looked it up. Sure than shit. He was arrested for domestic violence. Here it is. And then she's like, when police were here, when the sheriff's office was here, she told them about all the firearms and where the firearms came from.
And this is 3 days before?
So, yeah. So you're talking, so right now, I'm going to set the stage. So this is 2000 or 2001, she has this domestic violence issue.
Right.
It's reported to police. So there's an arrest made, right? So there's documented, evidence and things of what happened in her case. She tells law enforcement at that time, back when Don Lewis went missing, he showed up at our house in a van full of firearms given to him by Carol. That's what she alleged, right? But it's in the documents.
Yeah.
And then she starts telling them where all the weapons are hidden around the house. So they now collect all these firearms throughout the house. They were under the bed. They were in drawers. They were in closets. They were all over the place. But these are all Don Lewis's collectible items. So we're not talking just a random AR-15, from a shop that you can buy anywhere. These are collector items. These are worth a lot of money. And he was given all of these, right? So now law enforcement has them all. They put him in their evidence vault, right? And so we're able to see this is true. And I'm like,
he was given them by who?
By Carol.
Okay.
He was given them by Carol, but she said, Don no longer needs these. You can have them.
Yeah. Okay.
But keep in mind, at this point,
he hasn't even been reported missing.
It hasn't even been reported missing. If anything, law enforcement may have just found out. But she's giving away his stuff. Well, what if he came home?
Mm-hmm.
So why would you be giving away his prized possessions? These were things that were valuable to him, right? And now you're giving away his prized possessions.
Yeah. You know he's not coming.
What if he walked home through the door in 3 days, from 4 days? He's going to be pissed off that all his stuff is given away.
She knows that's not happening.
Bingo. So that's where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I started putting this stuff out on a podcast, right? I get a phone call from a TV producer. Her name was Rebecca Sermons, and she calls me and she says, look, we need an investigator for this TV show, which we ended up doing a whole show on investigation discovery. The show was called Joe Exotic, Tigers, Lies, and Cover-Up. So we talk about Joe for the first 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes, but then it turns into what happened to Don Lewis. And we did a whole deep dive into what happened to Don. We've been able to prove that there's no way he could have flown to Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. The type of planes that he flew would have had to have refueled about 3 times on the way to get to Costa Rica. There's no fuel points on the way there. So that isn't going to make sense. Not to mention Don was old, right? He wasn't a young, healthy, strong guy. He was a much older guy when he passed away. And so you're talking about taking a door on a plane, flying, I don't know, 130, 135 knots, whatever that translates to in miles per hour. You're trying to push open a door, because there was a theory that maybe he got thrown out of an airplane and all that. Like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's bullshit. So it's still a mystery of what the hell actually happened to Don. But something definitely happened, and there's a lot of strange pieces along the way that we uncovered, that we put out. The forgery that came about, that we put that all on the show.
What was the forgery?
So in order for her to receive all of Don's money, there was a power of attorney. Mm-hmm. To have that power of attorney, she can take control because he had things that were supposed to go to his daughters and various things. Carol then controlled all that money. We ended up having a handwriting expert that has done things for the FBI and all kinds. Like, this guy is a certified, true handwriting expert. He was able to take the marriage certificate of her and Don Lewis and put that directly over the power of attorney, and it is a utterly perfect match. And so I'm like, what are the chances of a perfect match? And he's like, dude, like 1 in a couple million. Like, it's not possible, because as people write, you could do your signature 1,000 times. They'll look similar, but they're never going to be the same. This was an exact traced duplicate.
Right.
Which is not going to happen. We've been able to show that now, and that ended up, we put that all over the television show. TMZ jumped on it, and a whole bunch jumped on that, but we put that on the show, and that goes to show that there's been some deceit into some of this. There were some other things that we uncovered too involving the handyman. There were checks written to him, just under $10,000. Mm-hmm. He was given properties. He was given, right after Don went missing, he was given 3 properties. They're money-generating properties. Well, they had trailers on them, or people were living on the land. He was given those for less than $10,000 a piece. And anything under $10,000, you don't need a paper trail for.
Right, yeah.
He was given 3. He's a handyman. Like, you come in, you cut the lawn, you fix this, all right, I got a busted pipe, go fix the busted pipe, whatever. Why the hell would you give your handyman all that kind of property?
No.
I wouldn't either.
You feed your husband to the tigers.
I mean, I was gonna say if he had killed my spouse, chopped him up, and fed him to the tigers, he'd get some property.
That's what Joe Exotic has always said, right?
Right.
And in all fairness, we don't truly know what happened to Don Lewis, mm-hmm. but we do know about the forgery.
Right.
We do know him going to Costa Rica on an airplane was bullshit. We do know there's a lot of things that don't add up. Same thing with all the firearms. Same thing with, he wasn't even reported missing yet you're already giving away his prized possession. So there was a lot of stuff that didn't make a whole lot of sense. So if anybody hasn't seen that show, Investigation Discovery, Joe Exotic, Tigers, Lies, and Cover-Up, it literally goes through the details of that.
Was the body ever found?
Body was never found.
Okay.
Don was never seen again. So wherever he is, however that came about, whether he was disposed of in a lake, whether he was chopped up, fed to the tigers, whether he was, nobody truly knows what happened to him.
And what? So, but is it alleged that
it's alleged that she had some involvement with it. Perhaps her and her father, who is now deceased as well. Her dad hated Don. They were damn near the same age. So yeah, he didn't, she did something. Right. What exactly it is? Okay, it's alleged that she did something.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't know 100% for a fact if she did or didn't, but we can absolutely prove the forgery. We can absolutely prove some of the anomalies that came about that don't make a whole lot of sense.
But her behavior after the death was it indicates that she probably had something to do with it.
It was very, very, very suspicious,
right,
to say the least. So, but we did that show, and then it was probably about 2-3 months after that show aired. I actually got to talk to Joe Exotic himself. So Joseph Maldonado Passage, Joe Exotic. He reached out to me, and he's
was he incarcerated?
He's incarcerated. Oh yeah, he was in prison.
What was he in prison for?
So he went to prison for
another murder,
2 murder for hire charges. That's what got him the majority of the time.
That's right, because to kill her.
For her, yeah. It was alleged against her. So Joe Exotic got the majority of his time, and his sentence was for 2 murder for hires. And then there was the crimes of they alleged to have killed 5 tigers to make room for younger tigers. And so he calls me, and he's like, look, man, I'm in prison. I didn't do shit. What they're alleging I didn't do. Here's how I know. A lot of people don't know that Joe Exotic has a photographic memory. Like when I had to work with him to help him out, what he did is he allowed me access to his Joe Exotic YouTube channel. That's what you would have seen in Tiger King, where he was like shooting the mannequin of Carol and like blowing stuff up. That was all on Joe Exotic TV. So I would go on Joe Exotic TV and start breaking down the case of what actually went wrong. So he had a photographic memory. Like he could literally tell me details. Like I don't know how the hell on earth he knew that mark was there and right there. Like it's insane. But it helped me out a lot. And I got all my information through the public records, and I literally read line for line on the transcripts and started calling out the bullshit.
There comes a point in life when you realize you need to be more intentional about what you're eating every day. That's actually why I started using Good Ranchers. Good Ranchers partners with local American farms and ranchers to deliver 100% American meat straight to your door. No imports, no guessing where it came from, just real, high-quality meat you can trust. And I'll be honest, once I started getting their deliveries, it just made everything easier. I always have good steaks, chicken, whatever I need ready to go. No last-minute grocery runs, no cutting corners. And they just launched custom boxes. So now, instead of getting a pre-built box, you can pick exactly what you want. If you eat more steak, load it up with steaks. More chicken, do that. It's built around what you actually use. And right now, when you start your plan, you'll get a choice of free meat that will be included with every order at no additional cost. And with my code INSIDE, you'll get $25 off your first order. That's free meat with every order and $25 off your first order with my code INSIDE when you start your plan with GoodRanchers.com. GoodRanchers.com, American meat delivered.
So a few of the things that I saw, which right out the gate, I don't know why his defense team, and if they did, I don't know about it, but his charges for the Tigers should have never ran at the same trial or the same time frame as his murder for hires. They should have been 2 totally different things. But the way the prosecutors did it was, let me convince everybody here in the jury that you killed 5 tigers. Because hell, if you're willing to kill an animal, would you be willing to kill a person? That was the mindset.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. But
I agree.
But what I do think is that the people on the jury will dislike you enough.
100%.
They feel they can prove the tigers, and I'll be so disgusted with you, I'll go ahead and find you guilty of this murder for hire that there's no real proof of.
Because if the jury will hate you for the tigers, because most people don't like animal cruelty.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want that stuff to happen. So if I can convince a jury that you did this to 5 tigers, then a murder for hire would be a walk in the park. right? That's how he was convicted of. That's how it went. What I will tell you through what I read and what I know, and I can disprove a lot of the bullshit that was in his trial. The way that, so we can either talk about the Tigers or we can talk about the murder for hire first. I don't know which one you want to go into, but we can do either way.
Tigers.
All right. So, well, yeah, it looked like he killed 5 tigers. That's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
What, for whatever reason, wasn't explained enough in the court process was all 5 of those tigers were older.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of ailments. We're talking arthritis. We're talking about, just injuries that they've had that, cats are animals. And what I've learned from animal experts is that when they're hurt or they're injured, they mask it. They're not like they can just come out and be like, oh, look at my paw, or like, look at my tooth, or my jaw's broken. Take a look at that. When they're hurting, they mask it. And until it becomes to the point where that pain is overbearing, that is when the signs really start to show. That's when they really come out with it. They become violent. They become reactionary. So all 5 of the tigers that were killed all had documented ailments with the vet. And I'm going to touch on this when it comes to the vets. It's not like you can take a tiger to your local vet up the street that are on almost every corner. You have to be an expert in exotic animals. And so there might only be 1 or 2 in your entire state. They might be 6 to 8 hours away. They're in different states, whatever. So he had an exotic animal veterinarian. When Joe euthanized these tigers, that exotic animal veterinarian was not in town. But there were problems going on with the tigers, and Joe needed to address it. He reached out to another exotic animal person, but that person was several hours away and wouldn't be able to get there for a few days. He didn't have the time. So he communicated with his own vet. And much like medicine for humans, you have the American Medicine or the American Journal of Medicine that they use as a guide, right? It's kind of like a rule book, so to speak, of how they handle medicine. Right. Well, the vets have the same exact thing. Joe euthanized these tigers in accordance with the American Medicine of Vets or Veterinary Medicine, whatever the hell they want to say that. He used a small caliber weapon, shot them in the back of the head. And I know this sounds bad. And for all the PETA lovers out there, I get it. I don't have anything to do with protecting them. I'm just explaining a story, please.
How do you think they kill cows? You know what I'm saying? They've got that thing that,
right.
Like,
so I they got mad at me years ago. I had nothing to do with protecting tigers. It's just part of the story. I just want to put that out there again. I don't need that shit in my life again. But essentially, he used those guidelines and euthanized all 5 tigers in accordance with the American Veterinarian of Medicine. It was documented.
Right.
They were then buried. And then, new tigers come in and things like that. Well, when that came about years later with Wildlife and Fisheries that investigated this, there was an agent with them. He was tipped off by Jeff Lowe, who was on that Tiger King show. They dug up the tigers. So here's the problem. They dug up where the tigers were, and there was 5 tiger carcasses. Instead of removing the tiger carcasses and sending it off to the forensic pathologist that was in Oregon to examine these animals, they only removed the heads. They didn't take the bodies. So only the 5 heads of the tigers, that's what you got to see on National Geographic and Time and all these magazines, are these agents with 5 tiger heads. They sent those tiger heads off. In court transcripts, when that forensic pathologist testified under oath, they said that she was able to find ailments with all 5 tigers just based on the skulls. The manner of death was a gunshot. That's already known.
Right.
But there were ailments outside of that was not caused by the gunshot that goes to show, hey, one of them had like a crack from like up here, like I don't know what you want to call it, mandible or whatever, all the way down across. There were literally ailments that would have caused a lot of problems. And she's like, I believe that they would have had arthritis and various things. She said, had they sent me the entire tiger carcass, I could have told you if all of those ailments that were documented would be true or not. But she's like, I only have the heads. And with the heads, I see ailments with all 5 tigers. Why the hell did they not send the whole entire tiger carcass, right? Like, if you're going to do an investigation, you got to do it. If you can't leave any leaf unturned, you got to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And that, they didn't. That is literally a humongous gap.
Right.
Just the skulls.
Why are we even having a trial on this at all if you only have this one? You don't have the full picture of what happened. Well, so why am I being tried for this? Like, you can because you wanted to save some money. Well, then let's not put me in prison. And
they're saying he was killing tigers in order to bring in new tigers and so on, and cubs, and like, that wasn't what the case was. And there was another part of the trial that they talk about, Joe doing some other illegal action with somebody that wanted an exotic animal. No, this person paid for it. There's paper trails. Like, when you take an animal and you have like a zoo that goes from state to state, there's records, there's documents that you have to provide. The person that they were claiming purchased one of the tigers or brought in this tiger wasn't even in the state at the date that this was even alleged, but somehow or another, this shit all seeps its way through. But again, you have the forensic pathologist that's telling you there's ailments with all 5 tigers. If I had all the tiger carcasses, I could tell you every detail. But of course, they made Joe look bad for the 5 tigers. And what people fail to realize, like, why didn't you shoot him with a dart and wait for them to fall asleep? Well, yeah, that works well in movies. Like, I fire off one dart that has some sort of chemical in it that puts an exotic animal down and has them going to sleep. It works that way in movies.
But that's not how you.
But that's not how it really works. You got to think, this damn thing, the needle on that alone is about 8 to 9 inches long. It's a big ass dart because you got to get in deep. Remember all the muscle mass on a tiger, right? But aside from meat and muscle, you have bone. So you might fire off this shot to try to put this animal to sleep, and you're hitting bones, you're hitting nerves. So what ends up happening? The tigers are in pain. Like, that hurts like hell. And they don't go to sleep right away. Sometimes you got to shoot them 2 or 3 times with that dart to get them to go to sleep. So what happens? They're freaking out. They're having seizures. They're climbing up the walls. And I mean, they're going nuts inside there. It's extremely painful until they pass out.
Right. A bullet's quick.
But that could take 35 minutes of agony and pain just to now have them go out. And now you're going to euthanize them by putting in a needle in their vein and using the chemicals they do to euthanize an animal. That seems far more cruel to me than something that's quick, because he's built that trust with them, right? And that's what he did. And I think people fail to realize that. And I don't think the defense team did enough to talk about that and capitalize that process of what really goes on, right? So that was one part. But now you move into the murder for hire, total bullshit. And here's how I'm going to say this. The law, right, for murder for hire, federal law, because he was charged federally, you have to show intent. That is written in their statute, right? You're hiring somebody to go commit this crime, you have to show intent. You and I can have a conversation right now. You could say whatever the hell you want, right? Because it's free speech, right? Even if I'm undercover, it doesn't matter. You can talk all the shit you want. The moment you show intent, it now turns criminal. And in Joe's case, you have James Garrettson. He was the heavy-set fat dude on the jet ski, right? He ended up getting the undercover FBI agent to go to Joe's zoo. He tried to arrange this meeting multiple times. Why? Because James Garrettson himself was in trouble. So this was his way of trying to get the attention off of him, right? So James Garrettson brings an undercover FBI agent to Joe's zoo. Joe didn't invite the guy. Joe didn't ask for him. James Garrettson brings him. He shows up to Joe and he says, "Hey, Joe, this is the guy, the guy that we talked about that to get care of that thing for you. Can we talk? Let's go to this back office." So they go to this back office in the zoo. And this is what we recorded on an audio. And it goes on for like 47, 48 minutes, whatever the hell it was. James Garrettson brings it up about, this is the guy I told you about to take care of that thing for you. And so after prompting Joe multiple times, Joe's like, "Yeah, what does something like this cost?" Guy's like, "I need $5,000 up front and $5,000 upon completion. And Joe goes, yeah, all right, fine. I'll sell some tiger cubs or something, right? Again, he said it. He didn't take action on it, right? So then he brings the conversation completely away from a murder for hire plot, completely away from it. Goes to talk about other shit. Now the FBI agent's going, hey, I'll tell you what. He's bringing it back in, and he's like, if you go to Walmart, get 2 burner phones. Bring me one of those burner phones. That's our only way to communicate. You have the burner phone. I have the burner phone. Nobody knows we're ever talking. And as soon as the deal is done, as soon as we're done and I take care of business, we destroy the phones and get rid of them, and then there'll be no trace. And Joe's like, yeah, okay, I'll go to Walmart and get phones. Then the guy goes back to a random conversation. He brings it back again and says, I'll tell you what, Joe, why don't you give me the firearm you want me to use, and I'll use it. I'll go down there and I'll use it with the firearm you give me. And he goes, why the hell would I ever do that? I'm going to give you a phone. I'm going to give you a firearm that's going to be traced back to me that you're going to use in a crime. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So that didn't work. The conversation ends. The FBI agent leaves with James Garretson. He takes off. Joe he never sold any tiger cubs. He never called James Garretson. This guy gave him his phone number. He never called the undercover FBI agent. He never spoke to James Garretson again.
Did he ever get the phones?
He never went and got the phones. He never sold the tiger cubs. He never gave the guy a weapon.
Right.
He never did any of the things. And again, you have to show intent. Now, if he went and sold tiger cubs and said, hey, here's $5,000 for you.
Right.
That shows intent.
Yeah.
If he went and got those burner phones and brought him the burner phone, that shows intent. If he gave him a firearm to use of choice to go down there and kill him, that would show intent. And he did absolutely none of them. So now you got a question of, is this free speech? Because where's the intent? Literally the law specifically says you have to show intent. When you look at these murder for hire cases that go on today, what do you see law enforcement doing? If it's an undercover agent, they get you to give them something of substance. Give me your vehicle registration. Give me the title to your car. Where's this person going to be?
Something of value.
Yeah, like, well, here's the route. This is the time they go to the gym. They leave for the gym every day at this way. This is the route they take. This is where you need to do it at. Here's your money up front, or I'll give it to you upon the life insurance that comes back. Any of the sorts. That shows intent because you now took it from conversation to something tangible. So what does law enforcement do? A lot of times, if they know about it beforehand, they'll warn the person that's supposed to get whacked. Right. And they stage the whole crime scene and bring the ex out and show her. And then she thinks it actually happened.
They show the pictures and they, oh my God. It's
right. Because now you've just shown, you literally have proved it from one side to the other. Well, what the hell do they have to prove in Joe's case? So you had a conversation about a zoo. You're bringing him up on things that he needs to do to show intent. And he shows none of it. How the hell do you convict him on that? Right. And that was the big piece that went into his appeal. His sentence did get reduced, but the judge only reduced it 12 months and 1 day. And the reason he's doing so much time is he had 2 charges for the murder for hire against Carol Baskin. Typically, when you have charges like that, they'd be like, we'll run them together. And therefore, you get 12 years on it. And that's it. This judge decided, oh no, you got 12 and 12, so I'm going to run them concurrently, or I'm going to run them back to back. So now you have 24 years. So you finish serving time for the first charge. Now you got to run the whole second charge. That's why he has so much time. He's been in prison more than enough for anything that happened with the Tigers. That would have been a 1 year at most and some heavy fines. But he's been sitting in prison now since 2020 or 2019, 2020. He's been in prison. So you're talking 7 years, and all his time is for murder for hire. That legitimately, I haven't seen anything different to show that he did not show, like, where did he show intent? And that went into his appeal. And again, he won the appeal. And sentence only got reduced 12 months and 1 day. Judge clearly doesn't like him.
So what's the game plan for him going forward? Like, how much does he have left on his sentence? And is there a way to, get him out?
As of right now, the earliest Joe can get out is 2030. That's the earliest he can get out. And he's battling cancer. He has prostate cancer. So he's sick. So he's at a minimal security type of a prison because of his treatments that he has to get every week with chemo and various things. So, but the earliest he can get out is 2030. He's fought this all the way up. He's trying to get the Supreme Court to review the appeal. The Supreme Court doesn't want to touch it. So they just came out with their ruling a few days ago that they weren't going to look into it. So they don't even, nothing ever got to be presented to them other than what was submitted.
Right.
They never got to hear the actual hearings of it. So I don't know if anything can be done for him to be able to get out any earlier than 2030, but it's becoming very well known that I think his murder for hire is pure shit. And, again, people can say what they want to say. They have a right to free speech, whether we like it or not. It wasn't like Carol Baskin was directly able to hear that he wants to do a murder for hire on her in this conversation. She didn't know that conversation would have took place. So how could she feel like an assault? You know what I mean? Or like some sort of verbal assault. It was nothing wasn't directed to her. So again, where's the intent? And the intent wasn't there. But when you convince a jury that he did this to 5 tigers, well, then it's reason to believe he would hire somebody to murder his rival in Florida. And that's how that all came about for Joe. I don't think the dude should be sitting in prison for all that right now.
Yeah. Any stupidity. I mean, he probably deserved a few years for stupidity.
For sure.
I've met multiple people that deserve 2 or 3 years just for
Pissing off the public, basically.
Yeah. Or no, I was thinking for just doing stupid things in the course of an investigation. It's
Right.
Or being indicted and being offered 3 years because that's probably what you deserved, even though you don't feel you're guilty. You probably you were such an idiot during the investigation and during the process of this business you were running. You said and did some stupid thing. You probably should get 3 years, but instead you said, "Oh, I'm not going to go to jail at all. I didn't do what they said, and I'm not okay." And then you go to trial and they get 15 years. And
Right.
You're like, "Ooh," you're like, "Yeah, but you did say this. You did do this. Like you did do some stupid thing. You don't deserve 15 years. You deserve 3. You should have taken the 3.
Right.
Well, I don't deserve 15. Well, yeah, but you should have taken the 3.
Right.
That's the penalty of going to trial, which I don't agree with, but
Right.
that's the way it works.
It's the way it works. So yeah, I mean,
So so you look into that whole thing.
I
Right.
do.
And I mean, obviously,
You know what's unique about me, and I became an investigative consultant because I try to consult for families. I'm not the guy that's going to sit outside of a house waiting on a cheating spouse or any of the other crap.
that's Tom Simon.
I don't-
Tom Simon does that. You know who Tom Simon is?
I don't.
do
I know
that.
the name, I believe.
He doesn't do that. He's a retired FBI
Yeah.
agent that has he's
I was going to say I thought it was linked with the FBI, but yeah.
Florida. He's now a Florida investigator, and now he chases. He follows people that like cheat on their spouse or something. No, I'm just joking. He didn't do it. He didn't do that. I'm just joking. He'd be like, "I don't do that. What are you talking?"
I don't do that shit.
But
But yeah, so for me, I'm an investigative consultant, and given my background is unique, right? Being that I've been on the law enforcement side of things, you kind of understand how it works. You understand how the court process works. And even though I consult a lot of times for families to try to get them to understand, maybe they didn't get the answers they needed on their family member, their loved one's suicide, right? They didn't believe it was a suicide, and then you see all the facts, and then you can explain it to them in a way that they understand, right? So there's all kinds of things. But as much as I've been very much a pro law enforcement guy, I am very much for helping people that are wrongfully convicted. In Joe's case, I do think the murder for hire is a bunch of shit, and they're it's been proven at this point. Yet he's still doing time for it, and I think that's an injustice. But what I encountered with a lady by the name of Melanie Curtin, now that is a case where I feel the injustice was overwhelming, and in my opinion, malicious prosecution. For those that don't know the story, in Louisiana in 2019, there was a high-ranking sheriff's deputy. He was the head of their SWAT team and head of narcotics. His name was Denny Perkins. He was arrested along with his wife, Cynthia Perkins. She was a school teacher. They married in 2018. They were arrested in 2019, and you're talking over 160 arrests for crimes against children. There was also adults There were charges against adults. There was bestiality. There were a treasure trove of stuff that took place. So when this hit the news in October 2019, it went national. Mm-hmm. It was on every major news channel because it involved a high-ranking deputy, and you're talking a monster amount of charges, right? So when they arrested Denny and Cynthia Perkins in October of 2019, the same day they were arrested, they did a search warrant on his house. They uncovered enough camera equipment inside that residence to outfit an entire movie set. Every corner of the house, everything was recorded at all times. They found numerous hard drives, monitors, just a whole bunch of evidence, right? So they have to start extrapolating it. How they got caught was, and this is going to be gross, and it's okay to be descriptive, like warning to anyone that's listening.
Right.
The problem, how he got caught was they made cupcakes at the house.
Oh, I know.
And
I remember this story.
He ejaculated into the cupcake batter. It was made into cupcakes. The wife brings cupcakes into the school.
You remember this?
Yeah.
Horrible, bro.
The cupcakes are then fed to the students, and pictures are taken of the students eating the cupcakes. During that time, and whether it was the cupcake incident itself or other times that Cynthia Perkins was taking pictures of students, Denny Perkins was then using software like Adobe and various things and was, basically cutting and pasting pictures of himself as if
Yeah.
You get it, right? So he was doing those things that ended up getting reported to, I forget what, but it's basically like the FBI monitors that, right? Exploited children, things like that. Well, that then got kicked to the Attorney General's office. Being that it involved a high-ranking deputy, the sheriff's office can't investigate it because it's one of their own, right? And then the prosecutor's office, knowing Denny and working with him, well, they have to recuse themselves because of that relationship. So it had to be investigated by the Louisiana Attorney General's office. So they went full on in this thing. So they start pulling all this information. Well, about 2 months into the arrest, they start putting out publicly that there's a third person involved with Dennis and Cynthia Perkins. So everybody, to include me, reading this is like, holy crap, who's involved with this? Who's involved with doing this disgusting stuff to children? Then they ended up arresting a lady in March of 2020, and her name was Melanie Curtin. She was arrested on a cruise ship. She went on a cruise, came back. The cruise ported there in New Orleans, and the Attorney General's office is there with a whole bunch of law enforcement. They basically raided it to get her out and then perp walked her. And for those that don't know what a perp walk is, it's pretty much where they set it up. The media set up there at stage, and you have your detectives and they walk out with the person and, and they get all their media shots and clips with that. It's called a perp walk. They perp walked her. And then the third person is now arrested, which is Melanie Curtin. Well, Denny and Cynthia Perkins are tied to the children. So what are you naturally going to think Melanie Curtin did?
Well, I mean, she's done some kind of something to do with children, right? That she was involved with this whole thing. She's involved.
Correct. So that's what they did. That was the narrative. That was what they staged it with. So she's now arrested. She has to go through her whole entire court proceedings. She has an attorney. They're trying to give exculpatory evidence. It comes down time for her trial.
Well, what is she charged with?
She was charged with aggravated rape, and it had nothing to do with children, absolutely nothing to do with children. What they found, and that's a good question, what they found was in 2014 on this hard drive, Denny and he was in a different relationship at that point as he was married, but to somebody else, okay? I refer to that person as the victim, okay? So in 2014, they find this video. And what it looks like Melanie Curtin, Denny Perkins, and this other female looks to be completely unconscious. And there's a threesome.
Okay.
All right. And they have this threesome that they find. Well, when the Attorney General's office originally went, they thought they had Denny's current wife, Cynthia Perkins. Denny and Cynthia both claimed they didn't know each other before 2018.
All right.
So here's this video of 2014 that they think is Cynthia Perkins. So they've got this I got you moment, right? Except when they bring the victim in and they show her the video, she immediately is like, Melanie doesn't look right. Now, you would think as an investigator on a high-profile case, someone makes the comment, well, Melanie doesn't look right. Well, first of all, you now know that that's not Cynthia, right? And then it should be, well, what do you mean Melanie doesn't look right? How do you know, like, how do you know Melanie? Like, explain that. Oh, we were friends. Well, they were friends. They knew each other for a year, right? So she's going to know her friend, and if her friend's demeanor is not correct. But they never asked, what do you mean she doesn't look right? It is now known that Denny Perkins, a narcotics detective, brought home drugs to the house, was known to drug his adult victims. And you're not going to ask, what do you mean she doesn't look right? Because me as an investigator, before I can determine if this person's a defendant, right, or a suspect, I need to rule out that they're not a victim too. And instead of asking any follow-up question, I shit you not one single question to, what do you mean she doesn't look right? It is silence on the audio recording for 2 minutes. Not a single question, just hear papers ruffling. And then it moves on to something else, right? So that's what got Melanie involved. So so when this investigation happened, they started saying the third person involved. They were actually talking about Melanie in this video. But that's 5 years early. It has absolutely nothing to do with children. Right. Nothing, right? So she ends up trying to talk to her attorney. They're trying to talk to the Attorney General's office. They're not having it. They charge her with aggravated rape. And in order to get an aggravated rape charge in the state of Louisiana, it has to be 2 or more people, or a weapon has to be involved. Denny Perkins was the other person charged with the aggravated rape. So her and Melanie had the same charge. That's how they're able to go forward with it. Comes down time for the trial. There's something called the rape shield law, which I believe in because there are victims and you don't want them, talking about things that could be dangerous towards them or bring up certain assaults and things like that. So I believe in the rape shield law. But the way that this trial went on, there was a judge in Louisiana that was new to the bench. So this is one of his first, especially his first big case, but he was brand new to the bench. And you have an Attorney General's office that took the law to an extreme, which prevented Melanie from being able to provide any type of exculpatory evidence that would have shown that, hey, I didn't do this, right? By that, I mean, anytime they wanted to question certain things, or an example, Denny Perkins' internet search history, none of that could be brought in. Photos of this victim posing in the same manner as the video. Remember, she was in a 7-year relationship, 8-year relationship with Denny. You would think she would be able to recount these things, but there's photos and videos of her role playing the same exact demeanor that was in that video that's got Melanie on this charge. But due to the rape shield law, they kept that out. She wasn't allowed to ask questions. Everything that she tried to do was considered exculpatory evidence wasn't allowed in. So basically the jury watches this video. It's 17 minutes long. And they're like, oh my God, this is horrendous. She gets convicted. So she gets convicted December of 2021.
This is a separate trial.
This is a separate trial from Denny and Cynthia. This is before Denny and Cynthia even pled out to their charges. Okay. So Melanie now gets convicted, life in prison without the chance of parole. That's what aggravated rape in Louisiana gets you. Okay. Life in prison without the chance of parole. They convicted her on that charge. So she's got no shot, right? She's hauled off, and now she's got to serve her time. They ended up, so fast forward just a little bit more. A few months later, Cynthia Perkins pleads to 40-something years, but with her cooperation. Denny Perkins pleads to 99 years and something else. He'll never see the light of day. So now they're pleaded. But a part of his plea deal did not have that charge that Melanie is now sitting in prison for.
So how is it aggravated if the other person's not charged?
Well, exactly. He was charged at the time her trial went on, but they did not put that as a part of his plea agreement. You would think that if the charge was that important to put Melanie Curtin away for life, that they would have stuck that charge with his plea deal, but they didn't. So the family, her sister, Melanie's sister, reached out to me March, April of 22. So Melanie was already serving about 4 or 5 months in prison. Sister reaches out to me and she's like, Jim, I know you've done exceptional work. I've seen your shows. I know the things you've done, but you also worked out there in Louisiana. You know how this stuff works. We need your help. Can you help us? And I was like, yeah. So I did the same damn thing I did for Joe Exotic. I read through the trial transcripts. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know what everybody else's opinions are. I want to come up with my own, right? So I read every damn thing line for line, and I started making notes of what I saw. Rape shield law, rape shield law, rape shield law, right? But then the family started providing me information, and I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. Here's an example. Check this shit out. When this case went down in 2014, it happened November 7th of 2014 is when this video is. The reason it's known is because it happened on a Friday night. The next night was Saturday night, and LSU was playing Alabama. That guy right there loves Alabama, right?
What year was it?
2014. I do believe you guys won. I think anyway. So that was going on the next day. Melanie Curtin. So this event goes down at Friday night. The next day, she's in the emergency room with signs and symptoms which are very much similar to somebody that's been drugged. Now, the problem for Melanie is that she was still married. Mm-hmm. She had kids. She brought her family to the emergency room. She didn't understand. She had a headache that she could not get rid of. She had extreme back pain. She had all kinds of ailments going on out of nowhere, like trouble breathing, like her respiratory functions were wrong. So they did blood work, but it was your typical metabolic panel. It wasn't like we're testing specifically for foreign substances. They didn't think they needed to. But all her signs and symptoms, she was having some sort of reaction to something, right? There's no way in hell she's going to know, in 5 years from now, I'm going to need this for my defense. Right? This is the next day. So I get this information and I'm like, well, how in the hell? Like, that doesn't make sense because these signs and symptoms, like I called medical friends that I knew and I said, would these be consistent? And they're like, absolutely. Those are consistent with somebody that could have been drugged. So then I start looking into things more and I start finding out there was a bunch of text messages. So the original trial for Melanie was supposed to happen in the spring of 2021. The few days before the trial was to start, the quote unquote victim finds a cell phone from that time frame, gives it to the Attorney General's office, and now that all has to become part of discovery, right? So the trial gets put on hold. They got all these text messages. Defense gets a look at these text messages, but some of the text messages could not be revealed to the jury because of the rape shield law. Mm-hmm. Only some of the text messages, not all of them, right? Again, not able to have a defense. And in those text messages was the victim messaging Melanie, not only the night before, but coercing her to come over. Like, hey, you need to come over. What are you doing? Why don't you come over? Come over. She's like, I've got my 8-year-old son with me. It's not an opportune time. I'm somewhere else right now. Come over after. Just come over. Just begging her constantly to come over. Denny wants to watch a movie with us. Just come over, right? 11 o'clock at night, she finally says, okay, I have my 8-year-old son with me. If we're just going to watch a movie, he'll probably fall asleep. So I'll come over and hang out for a little bit. She comes over. The last text message at 11:08 until the next day. The next morning, the victim is now texting Melanie, asking her, hey girl, how you doing? I'm not doing good. I'm in the hospital right now. I don't remember anything. Literally in text messages. I don't remember what happened. But the victim remembers everything. And the victim is like, and so Melanie's like, did you have anything to drink? She's like, the only drink I had was from your drink.
Right.
Okay. There's no way in hell she knew that this was going to be relevant 5 years later. No shot. But yet, all those text messages were not allowed to be revealed to the jury. So I'm like, well, that's certainly odd. Internet search history, not allowed in. Prior photos, videos, not allowed in. So I'm starting to see this whole dynamic, and I'm like, she got railroaded.
Right.
Like, she didn't commit this shit. She's a victim herself. So looking into this time and time again, and then find out, so when the victim testified in Melanie's trial, she got on the stand, and it sounded like she was the type of, but if you move to the neighborhood, she's going to knock on your door with a basket full of cookies and some more welcoming gifts, and just would never do anything wrong whatsoever, right? She said on the stand that she would never have engaged in threesomes, any type of swinging. She would never do any of that kind of lifestyle. Absolutely not, wouldn't happen. But then we find out in 2005, in her first divorce in another state, she had wrote a sworn affidavit. And in that sworn affidavit, it specifically stated the reason she was divorcing her husband at that time was because of the multiple orgies and swinging events that she was involved with him that he wanted her to do that was also on video.
Right.
Okay. So you have a person that's now testified in court stating that they never would do anything like that, ever. But now there's an affidavit saying completely otherwise. So it's got to bring in the question, is this role playing? Because clearly you were down with this lifestyle before.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden this is happening with Denny. Are you sure this, like, that's why the videos and the photos were important, right? So
was all this handed over to the defense?
Defense had, I don't believe the defense had the affidavit at that point.
Okay.
Because that was considered new evidence. So I don't believe they had that, but a lot of the evidence they did have was blocked. Like Melanie literally wasn't able to provide. So Melanie got an attorney by the name of Julie Tizard that did her appeal. And Julie had all this information that was found and put together, and she articulated this so well that it went to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. So now we're talking October of 23. So now she's been serving, coming up on 2 years, right? That she's still in prison for. And the First Circuit Court of Appeals comes back and says, need to let her out of prison. There were 11 issues within her trial that showed extreme prejudice towards the defendant, being her.
Right.
7 of those was the abuse of decision. I don't want to say abuse of power, because that's not really the right word. It's more like the abuse of discretion of what is allowed in or not from the judge.
Right.
7 times exculpatory evidence that should have been allowed in for Melanie's defense was never allowed into her case.
Right.
So it's essentially getting slapped on the hand 7 different times. That is a lot in a trial that's only 4 days long, 5 days long, right? So that looked really poorly on the judge. And again, in his defense, he was new. So I think, and I will say that 99% of the times, his rulings would have been okay, but this is that one case that it wasn't, right? So that's what is outlined. So they allow Melanie to get out of court or get out of prison. So she gets out of prison, and that was in October of 23. Judge is hot. Her first ever court appearance in front of him. They put her right back on a $350,000 bond, right back in all the same stipulations she would have when it's either bring her up on a new trial or drop the charges altogether. That's what was recommended. But they didn't. So they put her back on a $350,000 bond. Ankle monitors, can't leave. There's all these stipulations, right?
Well, but they didn't. You said that they didn't retry her.
Oh, they did later.
They did. Or
they did later.
Okay.
So the first thing the Attorney General's office did is they went to the Louisiana Supreme Court, and they filed an appeal to overrule the First Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So we have to wait on that. So Melanie's a free woman at this point, but she's being monitored, ankle monitors and so on. She's being treated very poorly. Again, had to post another $350,000 bond. So she's $700,000 in bonds, right? And then whatever cash they've had to pay, she's got to be monitored. It was just a nightmare situation. Several months later, the Louisiana Supreme Court comes out unanimously. Unanimous. No, we are not overruling the First Circuit Court of Appeals. This is spot on.
Right.
You either drop the charge or you're going to have to, or retry her, right? So now they've got to retry her. But now all this new evidence, all the stuff that wasn't allowed in last time,
is now allowed in.
Is now allowed in. So several months go by. They decide, okay, we're going to bring her back to trial. So the first trial was supposed to happen in November that we just had.
Did they come to her and say, look, just plead guilty to this and we'll give you time served? Because they do that a lot, right?
Yeah.
When they realize like, oh, fuck, we're about to lose. We don't have a great shot here. Let's just get her to plead guilty to something to keep us from being sued.
To stay
right,
face.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, save face. We still get a win. And there's no chance she can sue us because she's going to have to go in front of court and admit to, okay, time served, and I did do this. And then that kind of quashes your civil lawsuit.
100%. So my understanding, there were little talks about that, but there was mandatory that she would have to register as a sex offender.
And she's not going to do it.
She is not. I mean, she's been adamant since day one. I never did anything wrong. Why am I being treated like this, right? So they have to bring her back to trial. But they can't bring her on an aggravated charge because remember, that's now, Denny never pled to that.
Yeah.
So they decide they're going to lower the charges. So they lower it to simple rape. Man, it carries a 25-year sentence. Melanie wouldn't take a plea. It's a 25-year sentence. She's already had to serve some time, right? But from when this started in 2020, it's 2026. This has been going on for 6 years, right? Every media outlet, when she was arrested up until current, talks about her being involved with the children. She's the third person involved. So they absolutely set a narrative to every bit of it. She is the third person involved with children. On any post that you go to that's made about this, somebody will go on and talk about she should be behind bars because she's involved with the children. She had nothing to do with the damn children.
Yeah.
Nothing, right? So here it is. They got to bring her back. So they drop it to simple rape. They're going to bring her back to trial. But now it's all public, right? So all the information that was held out the first time, the court, the appeals court said, this has to come in as exculpatory. You can't use the rape shield law to a point where it completely prohibits somebody from having a defense. So what ended up getting introduced? There were hundreds and thousands of role playing, not just with the said victim, but Cynthia Perkins and other females where they're playing unconscious, putting a towel or a shirt or a sweater or a pillow over their face. That was his fetish. His internet search history showed that he had a massive fetish for a woman to be playing unconscious or to be acting dead. And then it's almost like a fantasy, right? He would tell his victims, like, hey, if you wake up while I'm doing this, you just role play it. Just continue until I finish, right? That's why that was important, right? The affidavit could come into play, right? The questions of their lifestyle and involvement, the hundreds of videos and photos he had of the said victim role playing in the exact same manner that had absolutely nothing to do with Melanie Curtin can now all come in. The emergency room stuff can come in. The full text messages.
The state has a really shitty case at this point.
They have a terrible case. Why on earth they had blinders on, but for whatever reason, they wanted to go after Melanie. And so her trial starts. I'll tell you this right now. I did a podcast the week prior to her trial, and I talk about these things. And sure enough, they want to silence me. They called my podcast an erroneous podcast full of lies. They wanted it introduced onto the record to start trial. They wanted the Zoom call that had the judge on there with the attorneys about this erroneous podcast full of lies.
Is this a new judge?
It's the same judge.
Are you fucking serious? You can't use the same fucking
same
judge.
And the same situation.
He's gonna tweak everything toward the prosecutor. At this point, everything's gonna go to the. He's still gonna try and get her found guilty to kind of vindicate the fact that yes, I was overruled on these things, but she was still found guilty. Like it had nothing to do with her verdict.
So it was in the same courthouse, same judge, same prosecutors, different defense attorneys.
Okay.
So they started the whole thing out that this erroneous podcast full of lies.
Right.
Every damn thing I talked about was in writing. It was in black and white. It was all the Attorney General's office's info.
Right.
The appeals. I just went to the First Circuit of Appeal and just download the PDF. Supreme Court rulings, the trial, everything that I could get, I had public record of. When they listed out all of Denny's charges in 2020, like I got that online and it details everything. But what did that do? It gave me a timeline of he and the victim's actual lifestyle, right? There were things within that he was charged with. Example. These are all things that could have come up in a trial. The victim, when she was with Denny, she found that Denny had a spy watch. He used to put the spy watch in the bathroom because his stepdaughter, which would have been this victim's daughter, he was recording her. He was recording the daughter when she would shower. He had a monitor in the attic that she also found that showed her daughter in her bedroom. It's a live feed. He was recording these things. She knew this. She claimed she called 911, but she didn't, somebody else called him and warned him about it. She confronted him about the spy watch. He smashed the spy watch, broke it. She also knows about him going into her daughter's room when she had a friend spending the night and him recording, up the shorts and things like that of these two teenage girls as he, pleasured himself and released himself on the edge of the bed that he covered up with a comforter. She knew of all these, and there's so much stuff, knew of all this, but she never called law enforcement. She never came forward with any of it. Not until she was interviewed before all this started coming to light. So she held on to this information 6 years, 7 years, never reported any of it. And I've always wondered, well, why is it that she's getting this treatment of said victim when honestly, she should be a defendant herself along with Denny. She knew of these things involving her child and did nothing about it, right? That if you don't protect your child against, and you have that information, think about how many victims could have been prevented had she had come forward back in that time. But she didn't. She kept it all hidden. And it wasn't until she was confronted. So all of a sudden now she's up there giving this expert testimony of like, I never would do this. I never would do that. What are you promised? Like, I know how shit works in law enforcement. What were you promised? Is it, hey, you either come forward and this is what we want you to say and you'll be fine, or I'm going to charge you for being accessory. Because I have charged people being accessories to crimes like that far less knowledge than what she did.
Right.
And those went through and they were verified and they were legit. So why is it that she's getting special treatment? I don't know. So they go to her trial. All that information is now allowed in. And the trial goes poorly for the Attorney General's office. There was a witness that came in that the defense brought in that dated Denny Perkins, and she took sleeping medication, I believe. So Denny would tell her, hey, take your sleeping medication, drive over to my house, get in my bed, and when you get sleepy or you fall asleep, I'm going to come in. And if you wake up while I'm doing this to you, just keep role playing it. Like you're unconscious, don't move.
Okay.
That went in there, which goes to show, remember this video. So the video that got Melanie Curtin, you have the victim laying on a bed. She's got her face covered. And then, you have Denny and Melanie doing some things. But Denny is also sexually involved with the victim at that time. The victim is then shown, like, if you're unconscious and you're out cold, and if you edit this if you have to, but one point, Denny slips out of her. She grabs him and gets him right back in. Right. She's doing things to keep him excited throughout the whole entire act. So how the hell are you seriously unconscious if you're able to know, oh, he slipped out, let me put him right back in and keeping him excited. Also, she didn't have nail polish on. Melanie did. And she's seen rubbing her hands through Melanie's hair while this is all going on. This was a complete role play. But they made it seem like this is some violent rape, right? So now the jury gets to know this and look for these things. And so they look for it, they see it. Okay, that doesn't make sense. All the text messages came to light. All those things that we talked about came to light. So they go back to deliberate. And it only took them an hour, a little over an hour, to come back 12-0, unanimous, not guilty. So now Melanie is a complete free woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was convicted to life in prison without the chance of parole. There's no way in hell the Attorney General's office didn't know that their case was weak sauce. And without being able to keep all the evidence out, when the truth comes out, which it did, and the first damn thing they say in their press conference, they lost the case because of an erroneous podcast, because of the media. And this was guilty by, listen to this. Just listen to this. This is insane to me because this is going to come back to bite them in the ass. They blamed it on podcast and media, okay, because the case was poo-pooed publicly before it ever even got into the court. And I sit back and I think about that, and I'm like, so I got my response on my podcast, and I'm going to say it again. At no time did the Attorney General's office come out and correct the record when Melanie Curtin was perp walked and told that she was the third person involved with Denny and Cynthia Perkins.
Right.
At no time did they try to correct the record that she had absolutely nothing to do with the children. They didn't make any public statements towards it. They still didn't make any public statements towards it. They made no corrections in the media. They ran with the narrative because that narrative fit for them.
Right.
Why do you think Melanie was convicted the first time? It's because everybody thought she was involved with the children. And they kept out all the evidence. Now that all that came in, your case was shit. And it was proven to be shit. And you targeted a woman that had 2 kids. Her ex-husband committed suicide in this process. So not only did the kids lose their mother to prison on a life sentence that she had nothing to do with, their father committed suicide. Can you imagine what those kids are going through? And they have the gall to come out and just say, it's because of the media.
Right.
No, it's because you did a bullshit job.
Right.
You did not, you don't leave loose ends like that. You just don't do it. And they want to blame me as a podcaster because I read what was in black and white and called them on their bullshit.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's loose ends. It sounds like you didn't have a case.
They didn't, but they forced one.
Right.
Because they needed something to stick to the wall to go after Denny and Cynthia Perkins.
Right, to save face.
I fully believe the victim that they had, the Attorney General's victim, I think she's probably a victim in a lot of things. I really, really do. There's a lot of shit I'm sure she went through all those years with Denny, that people don't even know about. And I feel for her for that. But what's amazing in this whole entire thing is that when they got all this evidence in 2019, Denny Perkins was so meticulous. He had a file for each female victim, a legit file.
Jeez.
The witness that came forward and talked about what she went through, he had a file on. He had a file on Melanie Curtin. He had a legit file for her. So what ends up happening is the Attorney General's office to this day still hasn't identified all the females. They never even called this witness that came that the defense put up.
Mm.
They never even contacted her in all the years that this went on. But yet you know that Melanie Curtin's a defendant, but you don't even identify their other victims. But yet you want to come out and blame a podcast, but then say you want to do more for victims? Well, then do more for victims.
Mm-hmm.
But they literally, in my opinion, malicious prosecution like I've never seen before. They took an innocent woman and put her in life behind bars. If it wasn't for her sister coming forward to ask for help, if it wasn't for meticulously reading through, and then obviously Melanie getting a great appeals attorney, a great defense team for her second trial, she put together a good team to give her the right defense. Without that stuff happening, she would have served the rest of her life behind bars. For what? And they want to come out and blame a podcast? Take a damn good look in the mirror and realize that you did a shitty job. And you put somebody behind bars that had no reason to be behind bars. And that, to me, to this day, is probably one of the biggest injustices I've seen through the court system. All the cards were stacked up against her. And unless we exposed the truth of what really happened, she still would have been sitting there. And to me, that should not ever happen like that. People believe you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent.
That's not the case.
And it's not the case. And shame on them for doing this. And what Melanie will do from here, I don't know. I know you mentioned, lawsuits or civil. I'm quite certain that'll end up happening. But that's going to be up to Melanie and her team. But I do know that they can never come at her again for this. It has been proven without a shadow of a doubt that she had nothing to do with this.
We should have her on the podcast. Let's go back to the beginning and kind of figure out how did you get into law enforcement?
So for me, the law enforcement, the initial thoughts of it was actually I was in high school still, and I had somebody try to break into my house. So they cut the screen, they tried to get the sliding glass door. They were trying to get that open. They weren't successful. My dad was out of town. At that point, he had a better job, so he was traveling. I came home and saw that, and so I had to call 911. They sent people over. They dusted for fingerprints and all those things. But I saw how they were trying to investigate it, and I'm like, God, that just looks kind of cool. Like, I don't know. It's just something about it, the response. But what really brought me to law enforcement was you have times your interactions with law enforcement will either make you love law enforcement or hate them.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I ended up loving law enforcement was, again, I was in high school. I was home alone. They didn't have a suspect yet. They dusted for fingerprints. And the cop that was working that night told me, he says, hey, I'm on shift for the next few days. He goes, every time I patrol through your neighborhood, I'll just hit your windows with my spotlight. You'll see it come through and you know it's me. And I didn't think he was actually going to do it. But sure enough, later that night, he came through the neighborhood, hit my windows with a spotlight, just letting me know he was there. And he did it true to his word. He did it for the few days that he was on shift. And from that moment on, I was like, man, I think this is pretty cool. Like, I kind of want to do the same thing. So for me, I already knew when I graduated college, I was going to go into law enforcement in some sort of way.
Oh, I thought you were hoping to go into the NFL.
Well, I wanted to go to the NFL, but
well, it was a backup plan. It was certainly still there.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. I mean, your sports career has to come to an end at some point,
right?
And when it comes to an end, whatever it be, whether it's college or after, it's to be able to get into law enforcement.
Where'd you go?
I ended up starting out my career in Baker Police Department, which was in North Baton Rouge. I started out there. I worked there for 8 or 9 months before I ended up transferring to the sheriff's office. And I worked in Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, which is right on the outskirts of Baton Rouge. And I worked everything from uniform patrol, undercover narcotics, was on special response team, and eventually made my way into detectives and worked homicide cases.
And by the time you graduate, you already have 4 years of military. So
correct.
You know, because don't most of them want you to have like at least a year of some kind of experience? I mean, every place is different, I understand, but it's usually kind of like they either want you to have military or have like some kind of a year of something. I know that like most of the counties here, like they require you to work. Well, they want some kind of law enforcement, or I think they put you into the jail for a certain period of time, and then they'll kind of bring you out, put you on patrol or something like that. But
a lot of people start that way. It's just to get you some experience. Military never hurts anybody on any resume. Mm-hmm. Just because the things you learn, the things that you do in the military, the way that it runs, it's just a little bit different. And so when you get into what we refer to as civilian life after the military, everything just seems to be relatively simple in comparison to what you've already been through. So I think that's a lot of the mindset, especially in law enforcement, to chain of command, to follow rules and, have to have a certain character. So yeah, I kind of fit right in.
Did you work for, like you said, the sheriff's department?
Yeah, I was there for about 4 years, 4.5 years.
And so you ended up with the Secret Service, right?
I did. So, but before I went to the Secret Service, the reason I had to leave the sheriff's office, I actually went back into the military as an officer. My oldest son was autistic, and
by this point you're married and you have a kid.
I had a kid.
Okay.
At the time, I had another one on the way. My oldest boy has autism, and to get services back then on something that wasn't as widely known as it is today, to get services, especially on a sheriff's office paycheck, man, it was tough. I mean, you're talking $150 for a 1 hour occupational therapy or speech therapy or anything of the sorts. So I worked every detail possible. I mean, most days I worked 7 days a week, somehow, some way, picking up any kind of extra detail assignments I could do. I was never home because I had to try to pay to give my kid a chance. Mm-hmm. It just got to the point where I couldn't hold on anymore. And so going back in the military, I had a degree. so I can go back in as an officer. It would my son would be able to get all the services he wanted at no cost. He would be a part of the Department of Defense, school systems, but he would get all the services necessary. So to me, it was like I had no choice. I made that choice, went back into the military to get my son all those services.
How long did you stay?
So I did a little over 3 years, did tours in Afghanistan, got out from that. It was actually while I was on deployment that I met a couple of Secret Service agents. So the president was going to be, this would have been President Barack Obama at the time. He was going to be stopping in Afghanistan for a very brief speech he was going to give. There were some Secret Service agents that came in advance, so they were there a few days before the president ever arrived. And there was actually a rocket attack that happened on the air base that I was on. I happened to be there for a meeting, and everybody took off to go get shelter from the rocket attack. And, you know, when you are in a combat environment and you're living on a forward operating base, which is very, very small in comparison to an airfield, and you hear of a rocket attack, you're like, if it gets me, it gets me, but that thing's going to blow up way outside of that airfield there, and it's never going to be anywhere near me. I thought, well, hell, Timmy Horton's coffee, there's not going to be a line. So I just casually walked my butt over there to Timmy Horton's. It was like everybody else is hiding for the rocket attack. I'm going to get my damn coffee.
What is Timmy Horton's?
It's a Canadian coffee brand. And so on the airfield, they had a coffee shop.
Oh, okay.
And all I had was that shitty-ass coffee you get in an MRE pack, you know, that we would eat in the field. And I'm like, this is some real coffee. I wanted some damn coffee. So I literally walked right on over there to Timmy Horton's. I got in line. The rocket alarm stopped. It had already detonated nowhere near where we were. And I got my coffee. And I turned around, and there was a couple of Secret Service agents, and I started just talking to them. And we just got into a conversation for a good 10, 15 minutes, and they told me you should apply. I went home on R&R just a few weeks later. That's when we get to go home for 2 weeks. And I couldn't sleep. You know, at that point, I was so used to not sleeping and everything going on in combat. So I opened up the laptop and filled out their wonderful 37-page application. Didn't know if I'd ever get a call or not because I went back to Afghanistan shortly thereafter. And when the deployment ended, my phone rang, and I was on my 30 days. They give us about 30 days off during that whole time frame. And my phone rang, and they're like, "Hey, you know, do you want to interview?" And at that point, I completely forgot. To be completely honest with you, I forgot I even applied because I had lost my best friend in combat during that, or one of my closest friends during that. He stepped on a roadside bomb, and you know,
what happened there? What?
So we were on, this was back when you had a conflict called Marja, which went on in Helmand province. So for those veterans that are listening or served over there, they'll know what I'm talking about. But Marja was a major conflict that the Marines had to take. It was very strategic land. There were a lot of Al-Qaeda and Taliban members in and out of there. They were making a lot of IEDs or improvised explosive devices. It was just a strategic piece. And so there was, when the Marja conflict happened, it pushed a lot of their fighters out towards the east, which is where we were. And so anytime that, you know, there's going to be a conflict, we're going to create what we refer to as a kill box. And that is to capture or kill as many of the fighters as possible and rid the enemy, right? So we were on joint missions at that time. He was not too far away from where I was. We were, you know, this whole mountain range area needed to be cleared. They came across an improvised explosive device that they noticed. So his name is Sal Korma. So what Sal did is they threw an infrared chem light. So it's just this small little chem light you would see that, you know, maybe 6 inches in length. You crack it, you bend it, it cracks, you shake it, and you throw it on there. Well, you used an infrared one because those are harder to see in the daytime. But at night, you can't see it unless you have night vision on. And that's more for helicopters, EOD, things like that. So they marked it with the chem light. And he called everything in. And the Explosive Ordnance Division would not come out unless it was better marked. That's according to the battle captain. What I mean by battle captain, you have a command center. There's a captain that literally sits there. Mm-hmm. And will give orders. He kind of controls everything from his position. and will relay information to Explosive Ordnance Division or to generals or whatever the case is, and then relay the information back to you. So he said, EOD won't come out unless it's marked better. So Sal responds back, and he's like, it's marked with a chem light. Like, it's literally sitting on top of it. And they're like, they won't come out unless it's marked better. So you need to take a VF-17 panel, which is, think of a massive panel, all right, that you put on the ground for helicopters to see when they're flying so they know where they need to come down at. Okay. They wanted him to mark a known improvised explosive device with a VF-17 panel. That is probably one of the most idiotic orders that could ever happen, because you never go back up to an improvised explosive device once it's found. You don't know if how it gets detonated. They can detonate it through a phone. They could detonate it by stepping on a pressure plate. There's numerous ways it can go off. But that was the order. So Sal responds back and was like, let me get this straight. You want me to go up to a known IED that's already marked and mark it with a VF-17 panel so EOD will come out and detonate this damn bomb? He's like, why don't you just let us detonate it in place? Because they have the stuff, they can detonate it themselves. They said, nope, that's what you're going to do. You're going to mark it with a VF-17 panel, and after it's marked, EOD will come out. There's too much Taliban presence out there. So one of his guys volunteered to go ahead and put the VF-17 panel down, and Sal said, nope, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me. So he made everybody push out a little bit further to get away from the blast on there. It's almost as if he knew. Mm-hmm. I think he knew he was gonna get it. He walked up to it, put down the VF-17 panel. As soon as that panel hit the IED, he went to go step off of it, detonated it, and it killed him right there on the spot. And how
did you hear about that?
So I didn't hear about it till several hours later. I knew there was somebody killed. I didn't know who. And so we finished up our patrols. I ended up getting back to our little operating base. And when I got there, I went to the chow hall. I wanted to eat. I finished up everything I had with vehicles and all the stuff that we do. My soldiers had already gone to eat. I went to go eat. And when I got in there, my executive officer came up to me and he says, hey, you're needed in the command center. I thought it was for another mission. So I got up, I walked into the TOC, or the tactical command center. And as soon as I got in there, there was my company commander, and there was a chaplain. And, you know, when your commander reaches out to hug you before telling you the news, you know it's bad. And then when I first saw the chaplain, I'm like, okay, what happened to my family back home? And then I found out it was Sal. And so I was pissed. I was obviously incredibly sad, bursting out in tears, you know, all that. I mean, that was my boy. And, you know, now I have to bring him back to the United States and bury him. So I ended up packing up my bags, and I got to the airfield, flew all the way back to the United States, got all my dress uniforms, met with his family, did all the funeral escorting. We buried him at West Point, and then got back on a plane, went back to Afghanistan. And when I got back, I was pissed. I wanted revenge bad. The Secret Service part, I had met those agents about a month before
this happened,
before Sal was killed.
Right.
It was in late March when I had that meeting, or somewhere mid to late March. I went home for R&R at the very end of March and the beginning of April, because it was my oldest son, my autistic son's birthday. So I went back for R&R during that time frame. When I came back from it, we immediately went into missions, and that's where Sal was killed. And so now I find myself back in the United States to do all the funeral escorting. And I'll tell you, that was probably one of the most challenging times for me, because I'm confused, I'm upset, I'm going through it emotionally, I'm processing a lot. Being in a war environment already isn't easy. Being involved in combat isn't easy. But losing your best friend, still being young and not really knowing how to process it. And one of the things I distinctively remember was going to Dover, Delaware. And the reason that's important is because that's where mortuary affairs is for the military. So any soldier's life that's lost in combat, they go to Dover. That's usually where you'll see them coming off of the plane in their casket and things like that, because the military studies each death. So they take photos, if autopsy's needed, there's a whole bunch of information they can get based on the dead bodies.
Right.
So that's how they figure out what was in the bombs, or, blast radius. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that they get from that. So they do that. But what they do an amazing job of is putting you back together for a funeral. And think about in Sal's situation, he was blown up almost standing on top of an improvised explosive device. His body was completely mangled. I mean, limbs, face. I mean, there was a lot of structural damage. But they took a photo of what he looked like and made a fake jaw, made, part of like your cheek, and put him back together to be able to have an open casket. But in that process, they have me in Dover, Delaware. They set me up in a hotel that's literally straight across the street from a liquor store. And when I got there, I was supposed to be able to get Sal the next morning. But they let me know late that evening that we need another 2 days to work on him.
Right.
And so for 2 days, I sat in this hotel with a liquor store literally straight across. And all I did for 2 days was drink liquor and smoke cigarettes and cry my eyes out and just going through it. And then they come back and they say, we need one more day. And so I did the same shit.
Right.
I literally was just cigarette after cigarette. I didn't eat food. I couldn't eat. I just drank. Knew at some point I got to shave my face. I've got to clean myself up. I can't go in there smelling like a brewery. So, I sobered myself up, in enough time and got myself presentable, put on my uniform. We went to mortuary affairs, recovered or received Sal's casket and body, and went back to New Jersey where he's from. We did the initial funeral service there in his hometown in New Jersey. And then from there, we did kind of like a convoy or a funeral escorting all the way up to West Point where he was buried.
At that point, is that when you get the phone call or?
No, then that point is when I completely forgot.
Oh, okay.
Like it was through all of that.
You have bigger issues going on.
Yeah, right? It was through all that time frame that I literally, it was just, I felt like I was in a fog for months over it. I completely forgot that I even applied to the Secret Service. And so I go back to Afghanistan in May. Sal died April 29th of 2010. I can never forget that, right? I was back there in May. I stayed for the remainder of our deployment. When I came home, it was when I was on that initial, they give you a little bit of vacation time or leave, and my phone rings, and it was the Secret Service. They're like, hey, you're back from your deployment. Are you ready to do your interview? And it took me a minute to go, oh, shit, that's right. I did apply to you guys. So I was like, all right, when and where? So I drove to Wilmington, North Carolina, and I did my initial interview. And then I came back. Then I had to do a panel interview. So I went and did the panel interview. The questions they asked me were about as basic as they could get. They just want to know who you are, right? And then I had to go in and do my polygraph. So I had to drive to Charlotte, North Carolina, to do the polygraph. I still remember the agent that did it. I ended up working with him later on in life. At the time, I thought he was the biggest dick in America, but in reality, he was actually super cool. He was just doing his job. But I remember getting in there. I had to be there at 7:30 in the morning, and all 37 pages of my application, to include their background checks, were all there. And it was time to sit down and get in the box, as we refer to it. And so I sat there, and man, we went over that polygraph so many times. I mean, we must have gone through the whole thing, start to finish, 5 or 6 times. I mean, the taxes were something like, you're lying to me, throwing papers against the wall on a pencil. And I'm like, dude, what am I lying about? Like, I told you everything, and it's just a game, right? Yeah. And so we played that game, but I walked out of there, and the sun was coming down. I got a 2-hour drive back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, or however the hell long that drive was. And I'm like, I take my name tag off and I threw it out, and I'm like, dude, I did everything right, but there's no way in hell I'm going to get this job after thinking of the way he reacted.
Right.
I'm like, just throwing shit against the wall, threw a pencil against the wall, like, you're full of shit, and said all that. So I left, and I get home, and I'm like, all right, I guess I had to figure out what my next duty station is going to be in the military. And they call me and they're like, you passed. You're good to go. Now we're really going to dive.
So, but Jimmy was so upset. Like, oh, that's just Jimmy. That's just Jimmy.
I was like, man, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, that's just the way it works. So whatever. Then they do a deep dive into my background. And I mean, hell, I had people calling me that I hadn't even spoken to in 20 years at this point, 15, 20 years. They went all the way to my high school. They were talking to teachers. And the thing is, like, you give them a list of people that are references. Mm-hmm. Well, they know they're never going to speak bad about you. Yeah. So it's like, all right, here's a yearbook that we got.
Right.
Show me 5 classmates that he was really close with. And they'll point out 5 random people. Right. And then they'll go find those people. They talk to teachers. They talk to, I mean, everybody. They leave no leaf unturned, honestly. And they did the whole background check, and then they come to the house and they say, okay, your packet's complete. You're available to be hired. We'll call you if there's a class for you and you get chosen. So you wait. And then sure enough, they called and they said, hey, we have a class starting here in a couple weeks. Do you want the job? Said, yeah.
How many people are in those classes?
They're small.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, there's not a lot of Secret Service agents.
It really depends on what is authorized for finances, like what they can afford to put through. Because, you know, when you go through the process, you have to start at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's in Glencoe, Georgia, so just south of Savannah. It's actually, the town is called Brunswick, Georgia. Yeah. And so that's where we refer to as FLETC. And so you have to go through FLETC first. That gets you certified as, you know, for federal law enforcement. And then from there, you go to Beltsville, Maryland, which is not too far from University of Maryland, College Park area. And then that's where the Secret Service training is. And you have to go through everything all over again, which you literally get there and they're like, everything you just learned at FLETC, forget it. That just got you qualified. Now you learn to do shit our way. And it is a long process. I mean, 18 weeks, 20 weeks, somewhere around there. I don't remember now, but it's a long time. The standards are much higher. They're a no bullshit agency. I mean, they hold the line on their standards. At least when I was in, that's absolutely how they did it. You pass everything and then you get to work.
You see some chubby chicks protecting some of these recent presidents. I'm not sure.
Well,
not sure.
You know,
I'm sure there's standards of hell.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't disagree. I think there's been some changes that have been made in not only with the military, but also in federal law enforcement and all different branches. The problem is, and I'm going to say it because I don't care, I say it all the time, you never, ever lower the standards to the lowest person. Mm-hmm. You got to make the lowest person come up to the standards of everybody else. Yeah. And the moment you lower standards, now people start creeping in that technically aren't really qualified, you know, or can't handle what needs to be done. In my time in the Secret Service, that standard was very strict and it did not bend. Mm-hmm. Like, you either pass or you don't. If you want to get on special teams, if you want to be on, you know, the president's special response team, as they'll put it, those are some badass dudes. They're all ex-military, the majority of them. They train nonstop. They work out nonstop. But those guys are elite. But how do you get into that if you're elite? You have to pass the standards. And then same thing with you want to protect the president of the United States, you better be on your game. Mm-hmm. There was a standard that had to be met every month. You qualify with a weapon. Every other month, you qualify with a physical fitness test. Fail to do either one of those, you're riding a desk until you do. Like, it was very strict. Nowadays, from the friends that I have on the inside, that standard's been dropped. And the moment you drop that standard, corners start getting cut. Unqualified people are out there. I mean, hell yeah, that one lady, she couldn't even holster her weapon.
Right.
I mean, that's pathetic, for God's sakes. They make you do it so much you could literally do it in your sleep.
Yeah, well, it should be muscle memory, right?
Like, it's 100,000% muscle memory. And I will say this too: Secret Service firearms instructors are the best in the world. They are unbelievable. They cross-train at the air marshals. And you got to think, air marshals, you're on a plane, you're in a capsule, you can't miss, right? So in my opinion, those are some of the best firearms instructors. But what we had in the Secret Service, as much training as they put us through, every round has to be accounted for. Like, you have a very high standard to meet. There is no reason why anybody that's been through that training should have any muscle memory mishaps,
right?
Not knowing what to do, miss a shot, anything. those instructors are too damn good, and they will weed you out if you can't meet the standard.
It's funny. So I was arrested by the Secret Service, but also the FBI was also had a cases on me, and I was interviewed by the FBI and the Secret Service. Like the Secret Service, from when they arrested me, like they were just the most professional the entire time. Like there was not, and you come in contact with 6 or 8 Secret Service agents, and I mean everybody was professional. Everybody, the FBI there was like out of the 6 or so that there were probably it was probably half, and there's probably 2 or 3 that were just like. And there was this one chick that was just horrible. It was just like, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't even be in law enforcement. You have such an attitude. You're making cracks. You're saying you're just being like you're not creating you're not creating an environment that is inducive for me to cooperate with you. You're making me want to say, go fuck yourself. I'll go back to my cell.
Right.
I mean, just an asshole. And it's so funny because everybody that had come after her would say, and I've said her name before. Her name was Candace. Candace Calderon, actually. She's retired. She's like a firearms instructor now somewhere. Didn't work.
Oh, wow.
Like she's retired.
Yeah,
I think she people pay her to instruct them on a firearms training. So, but it's so funny because everybody that came to talk to me after her, they were like, "Hey, I heard Candace was on your case." Yeah. They're like, "What'd you think of her?" I mean, every time I was like,
"That's not good."
Yeah, I was like, she was difficult. They go, "Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is." They were like,
intense.
Yeah, and I was just like, God, this is the people that work with you. All of them are like, "Yeah, bro, she's tough. She's a tough cookie." And this isn't one. This is every single one of them said it. Yeah. I thought you've got an attitude if that's how you're behaving. But the Secret Service they were all just super professional, very polite, professional. But also like, no, stop. I go in first. That whole thing is like, very polite though. Just stern. Like, hey, no, wait, hold on a second.
And that's the thing about the Secret Service is that, like I mentioned before about the standards and how they do things, and you either have to fit the mold of what they do or you're out, and you have to because of the amount of risk that's put into who you're protecting. Right. You have to be on your game all the time. But they are very, very, very professional. They do the job. They do the job right, and they take pride in that. So I'm glad that the agents treated you fairly, even though with your circumstances, obviously they were after you for some time.
They weren't the greatest circumstances, from my opinion.
But they treated you well. Yeah. And if I put in front of you all the people that I know that have had run-ins with other agencies that it didn't go so well because of exactly what you're saying, I could fill a room up with that. And that's unfortunate. But I know the Secret Service really does a good job, and they really hold that line. At least they did. I'm sure it's still the same. But
so, what was your first station? Assignment? What do they?
No, I stayed right there in D.C. So when I finished training, I stayed right there in D.C. and everything I did was relatively protection details. I mean, I went where President Barack Obama went. I went places where at the time was Joe Biden was the vice president. I ended up spending 6 weeks with Mitt Romney when he was presidential candidate. Went with him when he did his Small Town Matters tour. So I kind of bounced around with that a lot. Sometimes it was get on this plane. Like we fly military aircraft a lot out of Andrews Air Force Base. So the Air Force flies us around. And then there's times that I have to fly commercial. So I'd fly out of Reagan or Dulles Airport and, catch your flights wherever you're going. But a lot of it was military, and there might be 3 big old planes, C-17 planes, and you got one going to Portland, you got one going to Pittsburgh, and you got one going to San Diego. And they'd be like, hey, you're on this one here. This one's going to San Diego, and fly to San Diego and finish the detail and end up in Minnesota and just bounce.
Is this a detail like you're walking along with these guys, or is this a detail where, no, we're going in first and we're making sure this is the route?
Yeah, it changes from time to time. You have an advanced team, so sometimes you go in advance to whether you help get things set up or to start doing a lot of the pre-work, and other times you show up that day. Like they're in a presidential campaign, sometimes you might touch ground and you go straight to work on the event, and then when the event's over with, you're leapfrogging to somewhere else. I don't want to give too much about how they do it, but yeah. So
I saw it in The Line of Fire. So I know exactly how they do it.
And so, I mean, you could do sometimes 2-3 cities in a day. and then, stay for the night. And some places you'll go, you might be there for 3 or 4 days. Like, I got some cool details too. I got to go to Brazil for like 8 days. Literally went to Brazil for 8 days, sat around on the beach drinking Brahmas, which is their beer, because the vice president wasn't coming till a specific day. The pre-work was already done or was done. And so he was only on ground for not even a full day. He took pictures in the slums of Rio with a bunch of kids. That was primarily the main focus. So he took pictures with the kids there in the slums. And then from there, he walked through downtown Rio and, shook a few hands and smiled for some pictures and kissed a few babies. And then off on the plane he went. And then the plane we got to fly had a part that was broken. And if there's any part broken on an airplane in the Air Force, you have to wait for that part to come in. So I got an extra 2 days on the beach drinking Brahmas, hanging out, just waiting for that plane to get fixed. And it got fixed. And then I came back, ended up in Palm Springs, California. And
now you don't even need a photo op. They can just do it with AI.
Yeah.
I need Vice President Biden surrounded by a bunch of poor skinny kids. Make them more dirty. They need to be dirtier. Okay. All right. There you go. Okay. Yeah. We got 4.
Let's change the color of his tie.
Exactly.
Actually, let's remove the tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He needs to look sadder. Sadder.
Yeah. AI is something,
right.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Put everybody all of us out of business. Well, I guess there's some industries that's probably. No, at some point, yeah, there'll be this. It'll be law enforcement.
They're going to need us anymore.
Yeah,
everything's going to be robots and AI.
As soon as they become their hands become more I forget what the term is, more dexterity and more as soon as that type of thing they perfect that in 10 years from now.
But the thing I worry about, what happens when the robots turn against you?
I know, but I mean that's I'm not worried about that. What I'm concerned about is, well, first of all, is that obviously 90% of people are out of work, but you could just tax the robots.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, universal. Yeah, there will be some kind of universal. But where are you going to get that money? You're just going to tax the robots. Like you got 45 robots working for you. Well, we're going to tax them. So you have to pay for that, So, and then that gets redistributed. You have some kind of, I think the real problem is what happens when you lose your purpose in life. If I could wake up every day, everybody thinks that hey, if I won the lottery, like I'd be thrilled. No, you wouldn't. You just have a different set of problems.
Yeah.
Be
bored.
Right. You'd be bored. Oh, well, I could just do this, or I could do. No. Listen, I was on the run for 3 years, and fraud is not a full-time job. You have to keep yourself busy. You'll go nuts. And if you need a purpose, and if you don't have a purpose, you're going to have mass. You're going to have people, coming up. You already have it now. You have people just coming up with reasons to create issues that they want to pick it because this, or they decide that they're going to be. I'm a cat now.
Right.
I'm going to be a cat. What? Like you don't have enough problems. You're manufacturing problems.
I want to be a cat.
Yeah, I want to be a cat, and I want special bathrooms. Or I'm going to be a woman, and I want to use the men's room. Right? It's like, stop, man. Come on. Don't you have enough problems?
Right.
But the bottom line is that if you lose your purpose, then I think you see like massive suicides.
Oh, for sure.
Like you have to have a purpose to get out of bed in the morning.
100%. I mean, close friends that I've had probably, and like your experiences, I have a good friend of mine that I grew up with in high school, played football with my whole life, who was smart in his businesses, and he created a business and it became very profitable and sold it. He was probably 33, 34 years old, several $1 million, never needs to work another day in his life, right?
Within what? 6 months?
Within a year, he was like, I'm so godforsakingly bored. Yeah. Like, I can only play golf so many times. Yeah, in the very beginning, it was cool to wake up. I've got no worries. I got nothing to let me make my coffee and hang out. And then he was like, I need something to freaking do. Mm-hmm. So he started a pool company.
Yeah,
and he goes around cleaning pools. It's not like he needs the money.
No.
It's just something to do.
I need to get out of bed. I have to.
100%.
I interviewed a guy. Remember the guy that was ambushed? He was ambushed by his ex-wife and her new husband. Remember, he killed them both. It was the one in Ohio I shot. Yep. Fucking amazing story. But he had a nutrition company and sold it and made. I'm going to just come up with a number, but I mean it was an ungodly amount of number. Yeah. It wasn't like a few million. It's like 40 million. And he's like, and then like 2 years later, he's like, I mean, I've done everything I want to do. You can travel for only so long. You can only do so much before you're like, I have to do something. Is I started another company. The problem was that company took 5 or 10 years, and then he sold that company. He's like, this other company came in, gave us an offer that I knew I was never going to see that money before. He did that. Listen, he's done this 3 times, and then he's like in his probably mid to late 60s, and he's just like what. You think, the money will solve your problems. You just have a new set of problems. And then even worse, now you can't blame being poor on your problems. So it's, oh my God, you're telling me that my problems are actually me? I'm a part of the problem? So you're bored, you go a couple years, you drive yourself nuts, you have a couple projects, those peter out or get completed, and then you're like, fuck. And then you have to do something else. You start another business, and you... Just like your buddy. And I know people that have, we actually just had a buddy that basically, they're saying it died. He killed himself by like a drug overdose. I probably shouldn't say buddy, but a guy I know. Got out of prison and he just wasn't acclimating.
Right.
He just wasn't. And he's behind. And I know he went to jail. We both basically did about the same amount of time, about 13 years. I got out several years before him. But those first 6 months or so, you realize you're not equipped. 13 years, I'd never seen an iPhone. I'd never been on YouTube. I've never used an iPhone. I don't know what Wi-Fi is. I don't know how it works. I don't.
Right.
You feel like
it's a different
child.
world.
It's just it's humiliating, and you're asking children to help you send emails. I mean, I don't know where the
well,
where
that
to go.
still happens for me, but
Yeah, I know. I'm not perfect yet, but.
How do I post this on social media? God dang it, Dad.
Yeah.
You figure this out.
But this guy was not acclimating. And everybody's basically saying, no, he committed. I don't know why they're so sure of that. It's not like there was a note, but he basically went in. I don't know. I think maybe it was such a massive amount of drugs probably. And that's why they're so sure. I wasn't there, but yeah, he killed himself. And then I know other guys that are millionaires that have everything. All the toys in the world, and they're in and out of the hospital for alcoholism. Stop drinking. What are you doing? You just bought a new Ferrari. Why are you going to the hospital? Yeah, they keep telling me how to stop drinking. Then why haven't you stopped drinking?
Right?
Does that make sense?
For sure.
You've got everything.
Because your brain is meant to be engaged in something, and the moment you stop working your brain, everything falls apart around you. It's the same thing with people that are, military people that retire after doing 20 years, and they stay physically fit, and then they get out and they stop working out altogether. They're eating everything they see. They put on a bunch of weight, and then they have a bunch of health problems, and they pass away. They pass away from clogged arteries or heart disease or various things because they completely stopped everything that they were doing and never kept up with any of it. And boom, it happens. You can't do that.
I'm on the run, millions of dollars. I'm still flipping houses. I'm buying houses, renovating houses. It's I have no reason. Okay, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
I'm going to buy this house for $40,000. I'm going to dump 40 in it. I'm going to go there and meet with the contractors. And I'm even doing stuff no, I'm going to put in the wood floors myself because I can do that. I'm going to paint the rooms. I'm not trying to save money, but meeting the contractors is not a full-time job.
Right.
So I get a couple of kids to help me and a couple of 20-year-old guys to help me. We put in the hardwood floors, and it's this is fun. Because otherwise, I'm sleeping until 11. If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. When you're not resting well, everything else feels harder. Your focus, your mood, even your recovery. GhostBed is here to help you fix that. They've spent decades perfecting how to build a bed that's comfortable, durable, and designed to actually help you rest. Every GhostBed mattress features premier materials, proven cooling technology, and their exclusive ProCore layer, a targeted support system that reinforces the center of the mattress, where the body is heaviest. It helps keep your spine aligned and your back supported, so you can wake up ready for anything 2026 throws at you. Each mattress comes with a 101 night sleep trial and a 20 to 25 year warranty, so you can try it risk-free, knowing it's built to last. Shipping is fast and free. Most orders arrive in 2 to 5 days. GhostBed has great prices to begin with, up to 50% off comparable brands. And Inside True Crime listeners can get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. Just go to ghostbed.com/Cox and use promo code Cox at checkout. That's ghostbed.com/Cox, promo code Cox. Upgrade your sleep with Ghostbed, the makers of the coolest bed in the world. Some exclusions apply. See site for details.
Yeah.
Rolling out of bed, going getting coffee, going into the gym, walking back when they had malls, walking around the mall, buying socks and underwear, and then the next day trying to figure out, so going to a movie I've already seen by myself.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, I can't. I did that for a couple months.
It's kind of a lonely life.
Yeah, it is. It is. So yes, I think that's going to be a major problem. But back to you. As a sidebar.
Do you have any like stories from your time in the Secret Service that stand out that you can tell?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
There's a few.
Yeah, whose cocaine was it that they found?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all know the answer to that one. Some little no sugar there for somebody. But yeah, I mean, look, my time in the Secret Service was good. There are a few things that have happened, and I get this question all the time, and I don't mind talking about it. I don't really care. But I was not in Colombia in 2012 when that all went down in Bogota, Colombia, where Secret Service was
gone
arrested.
out drinking, right? Or what was it?
So there were some agents that had gone out that had done some drinking, and it was alleged that they had solicited some prostitutes locally there. There was a disagreement about money. So I'll tell you the story. So this is the way it went down. I was not on the trip. I always say that. So what happened?
I just gave him the address of the brothel. That's all I did. No.
So they have this trip, right? So the president was going to Colombia, so they send the advance team out there. So whenever you send that, it's not just Secret Service personnel. You have military people, right? Because a lot of times we use their canine dogs or their explosive ordnance division, and they literally get tasked with us for several months. FBI will go to events like that, State Department, things like that. So Secret Service is there in Bogota. Some of the agents went out, and it's okay to leave your hotel, right? There's usually a logbook, and you have to sign in and out of this logbook, like, going to whatever restaurant, or you kind of write it down so they have some more idea, and then you sign back in so they know that you're back. If you sign anyone in, like your family, sometimes you go to these trips and your family want to go to it, so they might meet you there. And they're okay with that as long as you don't leave classified information out or anything like that. So they're in Bogota. Some of the guys go out. They came back. They had solicited some prostitutes. There was a disagreement about the money. Girls start flipping out. The hotel security is there. They call for the local police to come. This is before they knew. When they put the call out, it goes out on the radio. Once that transmission happens, somebody somewhere is going to hear it. News stations monitor it all the time, right? You're just random people. Like, you're not getting away with it. As soon as it went out on the radio, they realize, oh shit, this is Secret Service. And they wouldn't have put that out on the radio, but it's already too late.
Right.
Local police show up, so they have to go wake up the agent in charge. And the first place they're going to go to is that logbook, right? Who logged in, people. And so, long story short, they end up sending some people home. So here in the United States, the next morning, what you see was reports: Secret Service in trouble, arrested, prostitutes, and so on. And then there's this plane that comes back to the U.S. that lands at Andrews Air Force Base. And if you're on that plane, then it was safely assumed that you were a part of what went on in Bogota. That wasn't completely the case. There were some agents that got sent home that actually hadn't done anything wrong. The problem is that, again, when you travel with the military, we kind of had to put the military on restrictions after this. But basically, they signed in local nationals, but they didn't want to put their room number so you don't get disturbed. So you just put a random room number, right? And so we might block off a certain amount of floors. Like, let's say in a hotel, you're going to block off 4 floors, and that's all going to be personnel. they put down different room numbers so they wouldn't get disturbed. So that's what happened. So you got people and they go and knock on doors and they're like, hey, you need to pack up your bags. You're going back to the U.S. And you're like, why? Signed into local national. I'm like, no, I didn't. Well, that'll all be figured out later on. You're getting on a plane, you're going back to the U.S. So you had people that were coming back that really had nothing to do with it. The majority of the people on that trip were actually part of White House communications or military that set up communications, military, EOD type people. They ended up getting away with it at the time. Yes, there were some agents that had done some wrong, but the majority of them were actually military. And so here's this plane. And so you got this plane that lands and you got spouses that are just losing their shit because they thought for sure, you came back in this plane. There's no way it'll be wrong. And then, the inspector general has to get involved and they do a full investigation. And that's where a lot of that information came to light that, yes, there were some dirty apples. There were some from the FBI. There were from the military, but not all the Secret Service people that got sent back had actually anything to do with it. But there were a few bad ones. And so I just remember that particular moment because I was in the U.S. at the time and I remember getting a call and it says, watch the news. And I'm like, what's going on? And it was like, hang up because nobody's going to talk about it on the phone. And sure as shit, man, I turned on the news and I saw that and I'm like, it's going to be bad. So then after that happened, everywhere we traveled, like, do you remember when they had Occupy DC? Do you remember that whole thing? It's basically Antifa.
Okay.
Before it became Antifa, and they would do like Occupy DC, Occupy Wall Street,
right?
Whatever, and it's the same damn stuff. So I remember it was only like a few weeks after the Columbia incident had happened, and I'm in Portland, Oregon with Michelle Obama, and when we got there, like we couldn't go anywhere without these people putting their iPhones at the time, right? Because iPhones were new. There were a few years at this point. They'd put them in your face and just be like, how's our taxpayer dollars going to prostitutes, huh? How's that? And they would just rip you nonstop. And you're like, I didn't go on the trip. I wasn't there. And it just constantly making those comments and putting in a camera in our face and trying to entice us in any which way. And then, we'll put out like caution tape. Like we have what's called rings of security, right? So if you step on this part of the line, then you're on, because the first lady is on the ground. So therefore I can enforce this. This is protective for us now. You will go to jail if you cross that line. And they would sit there the whole time with the camera in your face, just making comment after comment after comment, like, I'm going to cross. And they would just continue to do this nonstop. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, bro, you're 5'5", $120.
Right.
Like, I promise you.
I want you to cross.
Yeah, I will dump you on your ass so fast if you cross it. And they just continue to tease. And then he made that cross.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we dumped him on his ass quickly and called Portland PD. And it was like, here you go. We put him in his flexi cuffs and everything else and into the back of the van. And his buddy's recording, like, you get that? We'll put that on YouTube. They didn't, but at least if they did, I haven't found it yet. And trust me, I've searched, but those are just some of the little things like that Columbia incident, man. I heard about that forever. And even now when I talk to people, they're like, oh, did you go to Columbia? And I'm like, no, I didn't go to Columbia. Not everybody's about soliciting prostitutes in Bogota, but
yeah, just a couple of guys giving their money to charity.
Supporting single mothers.
Yeah,
and
the charity
to go to college.
There, so they gave it to Destiny.
I've heard that before. That's funny.
Yeah, I love the single mothers thing. So how long had you been in by the time you leave?
So I was in the Secret Service. My career was short, and it wasn't that I wanted it to be that way. I absolutely loved what I was doing. I loved the agency, met a lot of great friends, a lot of great people, loved the job. But about 3.5 years into it, I became a single parent. My older boys, their biological mother, became very ill. And I became a single parent and had to take care of my boys. And it was incredibly hard to do that when I'm traveling roughly 20, 25 days a month. I'm never home. You can't be a dad that way. And to me, I think the greatest job on earth is being a parent. I love my kids to death. So Again, having one with special needs, and then my other son is he's 18 now, but I needed to be there for them, and so I left the Secret Service. I didn't have much of a choice. I needed to be a full-time dad, and so I relocated to Orlando. I was dating somebody at the time. We ended up getting engaged and married, and she's
But
been.
you and your wife got divorced.
Yeah. We were already divorced when
Okay.
we were already divorced when she became ill. So I needed my boys, and so I became a single dad and took on that role and was there for them every day. So I actually got away from everything law enforcement because law enforcement is what I loved, but you're not going to get rich working in law enforcement, right? And I didn't want to go back. I couldn't financially, like if I went to go work for Orlando Police Department, which, I mean, great agency. For me, financially, I needed more than that. To be able to give my boys what they need and everything else, I needed a better financial future. So I actually, and I'll be honest, dude, I applied so many damn times trying to get into pharmaceutical or medical sales.
Mm-hmm.
And every interview I had, people were like, look, I'd hire you in a second to protect me, but your resume does not scream sales. And I'm like, bullshit. You can teach somebody to sell anything, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to be able to teach somebody to get up and grind like I will, right? Between the military through everything else, like you can't force, either you have it or you don't, right? And there's some tangibles that I have that I believe others don't. I will outwork people.
Right.
And give me the chance. And it wouldn't happen. And finally it happened with a company out here in Tampa called Hoy's Pharmaceuticals. And the hiring manager at the time, his son was a medic in the military and wanted to know if I knew his son. And I didn't know his son personally, but we were at the same duty station at the time that I was still in the military at Fort Bragg. And so we talked, and really that's what said. He goes, look, I'm going to give you a chance. He goes, your resume does not scream sales by any means, but I'm going to give you a shot. And so I got a job doing compounding pharmaceuticals for a local compounding pharmaceutical company here in Tampa, Florida. I learned weight loss products and would knock door to door between family medicine offices, weight loss clinics, and I just tried everything I could to push those weight loss products.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I learned how to do hormone replacement therapy, so it's another thing that I was able to sell. And then
That's what, TRT?
Yeah, like testosterone replacement, bioidentical hormones for females, estrogen, all kinds of stuff. The creams, they do creams. And so that's what I was doing. I was selling that stuff to doctors' offices or actually not necessarily selling to them, was trying to sell them to use our pharmacy.
Right.
And then they would put in their scripts, and that's where they would get it
your
from.
services. Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
And then eventually compounded like pain creams when that was a big hit before somebody decided to screw that one up. And I believe it was in Texas. They got busted for all kinds of fraud that was going on and charging TRICARE military like $20,000 for a pain cream for 90 days. Like, it was insane.
We had that guy on.
Did you?
We had a guy on.
All right. So look at how that turns, right? So
it was insane the amount of money they would pay for this stuff. They're like mixing it up in lotion and selling it, and
it was crazy. And that caused an awful lot of regulations, right? So that's what I was doing. I had a pretty good living. Unfortunately, the owner of that pharmacy died in a vehicle accident back in 2016. And so from there, I went on and continued to do medical sales until I had an opportunity to go on a podcast and share crime stories, like cases that I've actually worked, right? Like crazy sex-related cases that I've worked, homicide cases, things like that. So I had a little bit of a platform, started sharing that, was asked to look at a 14-year-old cold case at the time. We looked into it. We put it on this podcast that I was a guest on, and we ended up solving it in about 7 weeks.
Get out of here. What was it?
The victim's name was Courtney Coco. She was out of Alexandria, Louisiana. She was murdered in 2004. And so when the case was presented to us, 2019, it was right before the 15th year anniversary of her passing. And so we just took all the files. The family collected everything that they had, like all the police reports, all the documents, everything else. And we literally just did it as just a fresh set of eyes. Came up with a whole bunch of suspect list, what we think happened.
How had she passed away? How'd she die?
So the guy that was convicted for her murder was dating Courtney's sister, and they were hooked on pills and various things. It was over money, essentially. So Courtney had a different father. Her father would, put her life insurance money that she would get. So once she turned 18, like every year, she got a certain amount of it. So she had received money that September of 2004. So she had about 20 grand cash in the safe. She was going to buy a couple of four-wheelers. They did some four-wheeler riding right before her murder. And then all of a sudden, she just relatively vanishes. Her body was found a few days later in Winnie, Texas, dumped in a warehouse. And that was where the mystery lied for 14 years. She was brought from Alexandria, Louisiana and dumped in Winnie, Texas. It's very odd, right? So as we found information, there was an informant that came forward to me and gave me some information that she knew about from her ex-husband. And then she went and audio recorded a conversation with him where he talks about some of those key features that proved involvement. So when we got that, we were able to put it all together, gave it to law enforcement. Law enforcement then verifies everything that was said, so that way it holds weight in court. It's not just coming from a random podcaster. They verified everything, and they made their arrest, and the guy was convicted, and he's doing life in prison without the chance of parole for a murder. And so it was over. It was over cash. No, it was in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Oh, okay. So she was. I thought maybe she had traveled to Texas.
No. She was transported in the trunk of a vehicle and dumped.
Okay.
In Winnie, Texas.
Okay, so you did that podcast, and what changed?
So that opened the floodgates. So once that started, then it was just a lot of notoriety. I mean, no podcaster at that point had ever solved a cold case homicide live on a podcast. And so started doing live shows, started doing a lot of public speaking. I have Instagram, The Real Jim Rathmann. I have a website, JimRathmannTheCompany.com. So if there's people that want me to take a look at their case, they can submit it through there. I have a YouTube channel, The Jim Rathmann Show. And you can follow The Jim Rathmann Show on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio as well.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, if you want to check out Jim's, any of his links, go to YouTube, Spotify, anything. We're going to leave all of his links in the description box. So you just click on the description box, go there, hit the links. It'll shoot you right there. You can follow, subscribe, watch his content. Also, if you want to be a guest, we're going to leave our website. You can go to our website, go to the Be a Guest page, fill out the application, super short. Leave a 3 to 5 minute video about your story. We'll get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate it. See ya.